All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and today I want to talk to you guys about the ghettoization of America, from prosperity to poverty. And so today's stream really probably isn't going to be a bunch of new information for you, but it's going to be a lot of information you're probably already aware of, but brought to you in one place where it's going to be astonishing to look at the similarities of the American ghettos, the attributes, the characteristics of the projects or living in the ghetto, and what the actual state of America looks like right now. I'm not kidding. It's going to be a bit flabbergasted. Well, some of you may be a bit flabbergasted due to the wealth of articles I have on increased crime, increased violence and murder, so on and so forth. And so I'm going to go into a few of these different characteristics that we tend to associate with people living in the ghetto, people living in the projects. But what kind of spawned today's stream was actually yesterday at the gym. I was lifting weights with one of the fathers of a guy I played high school basketball with, and we started talking about politics, the state of the world, the state of the United States, and he kept going on about how nobody reads history anymore. Nobody knows what's going on because all the young kids, they don't know history. And if they don't know history in a way, and this is true, we all sort of have an amnesia. We can't remember our past because we don't know our past. It's like a person moving through the world with no memory. And that's how we are as a species, as nations, when we don't know our history. And so we were talking this or that, and then I made a comment about, it's like they're trying to, it's like we're going through a process of the ghettoization of America. And then I was working out, and then I thought, wow, that's actually pretty accurate. And so what I want to show you then is, again, the characteristics of living in the ghetto and the current state of America. Now, we already know about the Great Reset. We know that we're moving towards a one-world government. We know that this is a pandemic. We know that this is all an orchestrated collapse of the Western world. But I think it's interesting to then, when we're going to go through these articles, to see, again, these immense similarities of what does it mean to live in the ghetto. Well, the number one thing I think most of us would think about living in the ghetto, well, it's number one, increase in crime. Crime rates within the projects, within dilapidated neighborhoods, poverty-stricken communities, that the crime rates are through the roof. And I just saw a video yesterday on Twitter about a guy who was shocked. He went to like a New York City Walgreens, and there was a gentleman that walked in there with a grocery cart and just started casually putting stuff in his cart and probably had about $200, $300 worth of goods and just used the shopping cart and just walked right out of the store and just used the shopping cart and just kept on going to wherever he was. He planned on his destination to be in New York. And the guy was stunned. And he's like, oh, I came, this is America's capital. I can't believe I come here. And the Walgreens clerk, he's like, aren't you going to do something? They're stealing, $200, $300 worth of product. And the person, I don't know if it was male or female, but they said, we can't. We're literally told not to pursue anybody for petty theft. And when I was living in San Francisco in 16, 17, 18, 19, I guess it was 17, 18, 19, I was there. They passed, I forget the name of the bill, but something about where basically if you steal less than $1,000, you can't be prosecuted for it. And I remember immediately within the Bay Area, there was all these instances of people just putting stuff in their carts and literally just walking out. And now we see videos of it all the time in California. And this is, again, indicative of the state of America itself, that we are moving through this collapse. It literally is the sort of ghettoization of our country. We can look at increased violence and murder. The statistics, I have multiple articles. One's talking about 27%. Another one I think is 31% within just a year or 2 years. I'm talking about murder, homicide is increased, and this is across the United States as a whole. This isn't just Southside Chicago. This isn't Compton. This isn't Harlem. No, this is the entirety of the country. And so we have to realize that this nation state, the country that was promised all this milk and honey, well, the milk's sour, and the honey's probably stuck on a ship outside the country, waiting to be brought in due to the supply chain crisis. Again, that's been orchestrated and planned. So the violence and the murder, it's unreal. It's unreal. And then we can see in these certain states, particularly blue states, where people are being let out, and then they committed first-degree murder. They served, 20 years or something, and they're being let out. I remember at the beginning of the coup, remember how they didn't want the people, the prisoners, to be stuck in prison. They might get the COVID, and so they started letting them out. And it's like, what? Yeah, exactly. Hey, shout out to John Pro. Make sure you guys follow John Pro Art over on Instagram, our local, or our iconographer here in our community. I hope you're enjoying your time in Colorado Springs, John. God bless you, brother. He says, yeah, you can think of the summer of St. Floyd. That's exactly my point, right? Now it's, again, all those, so we saw the buildings burning, in 2020 after, St. George Floyd, passed away due to unfortunate circumstances from the police officer. Again, however you want to understand that, I'm not even going to get into that. And this stream isn't even going to get into race. I know somebody posted a comment before the stream even started about, oh, well, you better talk about, poor blacks versus poor white. No, the point of this stream is not to get into the dilemmas and the struggles of particular communities. No, the point is to realize that the massive wealth transfer, that the printing of money, the massive inflation of the currency, the movement to the digital currencies, this is part of a ghettoization process. That what is the ghetto? Well, it's actually a term that comes from the Venetian, dealing with all the neighborhoods that they would relegate the Jews to. And so a ghetto is a place where you basically, you're building walls around them. You're relegating them to a particular region of a city. Now, in America, ghettos took on a different kind of context. It wasn't about Jews. It was often about African Americans, and then when some of the Italians came, the Polish came, they started to have their own, the Irish ghetto, the black ghetto, the Italian ghetto, and it was a term sort of to refer to these sort of localized communities of ethnicity and of peoples. But as we moved further into the 20th century, the ghetto or the projects is really associated with just poverty-stricken areas, white, black, Hispanic. Yeah, some of the regions, Compton used to be a predominantly black project or ghetto. Now it's predominantly Hispanic. Harlem, But what we now recognize as a quote unquote ghetto is a place where just again, all these characteristics: high increase in crime, increase in violence and murder. How about an increase in drug addiction? You start looking up the statistics in America's drug addiction, it's not going like, it's a rocket ship. It just continues to increase. We think of the ghettos. Oh, that's where, they have prostitutes and strip clubs and there's liquor stores on every corner. What do you think is going on right now? I have an article talking about how Americans are literally drinking themselves to death, especially since 2020, that more people are dying from alcoholism than before. More people are becoming alcoholics. I have an article talking about how fentanyl is killing. It is the leading cause of death between people of age 18 and 45. The leading cause of death in America is a fentanyl overdose. What? I thought that only happens in the ghetto. I thought that happens in the projects. No, that is the entire United States right now. The entirety of the United States is dealing with massive drug addiction. I have an article talking about since the pandemic started, every recreational drug has seen a significant increase in use and addiction. So we can also look at again, poverty itself. You start looking at the inflation rates. You start looking at the average amount of American debt various households have. Dramatic increase. I have an article talking about the social mobility in America. This was the American dream, right? You come to, again, the land of milk and honey, of opportunity, of prosperity, of capitalism, of the free market. And you can make yourself, you can build your own business, you can make your stamp. If you work hard, you can make it. And yet I have an article literally showing how social mobility is the worst, it recorded in I think it says the last 50 years, but that basically if you're 20 years old, I think the article was from 18 or whatever, if you're in your 20s and you're basically whatever economic group you are presently in, that's about as high as you're going to get. And we already know that that's the plan of the Great Reset. We know you're not going to own anything and you're going to like it. And so this is, as I'm claiming, the ghettoization of America. We are, and this is true for the entire Western world. And I think it's no joke then how they want to flood these Western countries with a variety of different racial groups. And I have no prejudice towards any one group or anything like that. But, if you take all the Japanese people off the island of Japan and you fill them with people from the, Indian subcontinent, is it still Japanese culture? Is it still Japan? What exactly? Well, no, it's Little India. It's the island of Little India now. People do make up their culture. And yes, America has always been multiracial. Yes, it was predominantly Western European. But now, again, they're flooding. They're flooding these Western nations, whether it be Europe or the United States or Canada, with people from the third world. Why? Because it's the ghettoization of America. It's the ghettoization of the Western world at large. And so we can look at life expectancy. Well, if you're living in the ghetto, there's increased crime, increased murder rates, violence, increased drug addiction, drug abuse, drug overdoses, obviously increased poverty, and probably lower life expectancy. Well, the United States has been on a multiple consecutive year run of a lower life expectancy. What? I thought we were progressive. I thought that the world, with all the technology, everything keeps getting better and better and better. No, actually, if you start to look at life expectancy in the United States, especially since the mid 2000s, so let's say from 2010 to now, it's declining. People are living shorter and shorter lives. What? Why would that be? I thought, again, this is a prosperous first world country. Why would people be dying sooner? But this is the ghettoization. You see that literally the entire country is becoming a project. Harder social mobility, as I said, increased child abuse. You start looking at instances of child abuse in the United States, again, on a rampant incline. You look at child abuse within poverty-stricken regions, the ghetto, girls having to go into sex work at a young age, potential homosexuality, pedophilia, that type of thing. Well, it has a presence within the ghetto. Now it's actually on an annual increase in the United States. And we see the minor attracted movement. We see the normalization of a lot of these sexual practices. And it's funny then that the people who promote a lot of these things obviously promote the political party that promotes the ghettoization of America. And I think, as again, John Pro mentioned with the St. George Floyd of the summer of 2020, look at all the buildings that burned. Recently I saw there is a comment that was made by Jack Del Rio. He is I believe, the defensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders, used to be the Washington Redskins. And there was a firestorm, I think it was yesterday or the day before, because he was being interviewed at a press conference. And I forget exactly how it was brought up, but he started talking about, I don't understand this January 6th thing where all the people from January 6th are being arrested. They're being imprisoned. They're in solitary confinement. There was nothing that was burnt down. There was no property that was destroyed other than, again, the window that looked to be like an FBI informant or some type of FBI agent actually led the people into the Capitol building. But then you look at the summer of 2020, and who was held responsible for burning down all those buildings? Burning down the same communities that BLM was supposed to support. And I think that's the perfect lens of analysis, is that BLM is promising equality, right? It wants equality. Black Lives Matter. And yet what they're doing is actually making the country equal to the same conditions that the black people are frustrated with. The same poverty-stricken, drug-addicted, crime-ridden problems. That is what Black Lives Matter is marching on, and then talking about the sort of social inequalities and the institutional injustices. That's exactly what's happening to everybody. And so, in a way, is the BLM movement a lens to look at that we're all becoming part of the ghetto? You see, the BLM, the Black Lives Matter, is that Black lives do matter, and we're all starting to live the ramifications, the consequences, the struggles that the Black Lives Matter movement was actually up against. I mean, because we saw the women that were in charge of that movement, they take millions of dollars. They bought like multiple houses in California. So when you think of the ghetto, go pull up pictures of the American ghetto. What do you see? You see dilapidated buildings. You see boarded up doorways, windows. So you see the loss of infrastructure, right? Well, I got an article that talks about how the American infrastructure is one of the worst in modern first world nations. Our country is one of the worst infrastructures in the world for first world nations. Well, how could that be? My gosh, according to GDP, according to all the money that they print, what's going on? How is it that our infrastructure is so poor? Because we are in the ghetto. They're literally extracting wealth from the taxpayer. They're laundering money through Ukraine. I mean, just think about that. $53 billion with a B to Ukraine, which we already know is going to be funneled through all the same people, the same names. They're going to get paid through it. And so they're taking the money from the taxpayer. So what do we see? Organized crime. Where do organized crimes thrive? In the ghetto. And that is America right now. And it's not just the Biden administration. Yeah, it's but that's just a front for what I'm talking about. All these problems didn't manifest overnight. These are societal ills that have plagued this country really since the 60s. And they've just been getting worse. It's like a tumbleweed. It's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Guys, smash that like if you can. Really appreciate everybody being here. If you would like to support, please use the Streamlabs link. I got another article. What do we think about the ghettos? What do we think about broken homes? The lack of nuclear families? The fact that young men don't have fathers, right? That's one of the big criticisms of the ghetto and the ills of those communities is that they don't have fathers. Well, I got an article showing that I think it's in 2020 or 2021, according to the statistics, 50%, one out of every two children is going to be born to a single mother, and that is of all ethnicities. Of all ethnicities. I mean, this isn't a black thing. This isn't just a white thing. Every ethnicity group in America, when you take it in totality, one out of every two children is going to be born to a single mother. And it was talking about how there's again, this article is kind of in favor of the new concepts of motherhood. You know, having children before marriage, having children with, friends or just, sexual partners. No. Again, look at what that's done to the black community. And we know about welfare. We know about what happened in the 1960s when they took the black man out of the family and they replaced it with welfare. And what's one of the most popular things going on right now in the United States and really the Western world is the UBI. I mean, the Biden administration increased welfare by, for people, for government assisted families that are in poverty by like $11,000. If you just go on welfare and like you're a poor family with kids, I have one article that's saying that you can make up to $75,000 a year from the government. So what? $75,000 a year from the government will pay you to be on welfare. What? Again, it's the same thing. It's the recapitulation of the same patterns, but it's happening at scale. It's the entire country itself now. We can see that what's been going on in the black communities has been an experiment, whether it be the Tuskegee experiment. Could there have been a medical experiment that's happened in the last 2 years that maybe would rival even the Tuskegee experiment? I would say so. I would say so. Again, we're gonna watch what we say and not trigger the algorithm. But the lack of nuclear families, the increase in government financial assistance, the increase in financial debt. That's another thing within some of these articles that I have to show you guys is the average amount of debt continually in every single year. It's increasing for every American. Every American, the average debt that's held is increasing. So getting out of debt is becoming harder and harder and harder. And we can look at our country that we're now in trillions of dollars of debt. So the country itself, again, is bankrupt. It's only running on this sort of fake fiat, Federal Reserve facade, right? This sort of magical monetary system that they've created. I have another one. What do we think about when the people are in the ghetto? Well, they're less educated. They have less opportunities. I've already talked about that social mobility is absolutely on the decline in this country. But in addition to that, literacy rates, and I've mentioned this in other videos, literacy, the ability to read is on a dramatic decline as well. People aren't as literate in 2022 as they were, let's say, 1960. 1970. What? People are less literate? And what do you think that does? Reading is essential for the mind. Reading is essential for the development of the linguistic faculty. As Marshall McLuhan talked about, reading is a hot medium. His criticisms of hot and cold mediums, meaning the intensity of which one has to pay attention to use and acquire information from that medium. Television is a cold medium. It's sedative. You sit there and the information bombards you to the point that you really don't it's not involving. You really don't have to pay a lot of attention to acquire the information from a television screen. However, when you read, when you listen to a radio or these types of things, he considered these hot mediums. And reading, particularly reading in manuscripts, he talked about how this was part of the sensory ratios of man. And that when we look at a lot of the sort of great accomplishments in society, well, these were literate people. And we are now living, and he theorized that as electrical technologies, and I need to do another Marshall McLuhan stream here soon, but he even theorized that as digital technologies, as electronic technologies increase in availability and use, People were going to become more archaic. That's what he called the global village. We were going to become more like tribal people. We're going to become more like pre-literate people. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And again, within a contemporary Western society, where would you point that to? You would point, oh, the ghetto, right? It's in the projects where people, they can't read. They can't have critical thinking, right? You literally cannot think something you cannot say. That's why words are like stones. And with words and concepts in your mind, you can throw the stones down and you can walk across, vast abysses of thoughts, of concepts, and reflect and think critically. But that's tied to the use of language, which is tied to the ability to read. And we see that that's on the incline. So is it any coincidence that critical thinking is absolutely absent from the majority of our society? Of course not. And so as communication, as literacy, as language is on the decline, of course we see neighborhoods and communities on the decline as well. And so I have another article talking about the loss of neighborhoods and community, and that Americans feel more lonely than ever any other time recorded in history, yet they're surrounded by more and more people. What's going on? How is this happening? And you see, it's like people are sort of abandoned. They're stuck inside of the American ghetto. And that is this orchestrated collapse of our society that has been planned, that is, it's underway right now. And that we need, this isn't the most hopeful stream in the world, but we have to know what we're up against. And I think it's just astonishing as I've gone through increased crime, increased violence and murder, increased drug addiction, increased drug overdose, increased poverty, lower life expectancy, harder social mobility, increased child abuse, poor infrastructure, less nuclear families, loss of neighborhoods and communities, decline of literacy, increased financial debt, and increase in government welfare. All these things are associated with the ghetto, and all these things are currently happening to America at large. And so this is what we're going to get into today. And so, guys, if you can, smash that like. Would truly, truly appreciate that. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope everybody's having a wonderful Thursday today. God bless you all. I got a few quick announcements that I got to say. Guys, we have a premium members Zoom group tonight. So shout out to all the premium COTEL members. For $25 a month, you could also join our meeting tonight. That we're going to do a private Zoom meeting. So for all of our premium members, we get together twice every month in Zoom groups, and we chit-chat about the latest happenings in the world, personal things going on in people's lives. We throw around debate questions. I mean, anything and everything's thrown around in those groups, and I know everybody's really, really been enjoying it. So if you would like to, you could also join with a premium membership if you want to join tonight. Also, I have the $5 basic logo subscription membership, and that would give you access to an exclusive video library of tons of different videos that I've already done exclusive for website members. Shout out to Stakeholder over on Rockfin, throws in a $10 super chat. Truly appreciate that. Shout out to everybody over on the Rock who's watching live right now. I appreciate you all very, very much. So if you want to join tonight's group, make sure to sign up for a website membership, or if you want to have access to some of those exclusive videos, make sure you also sign up for the $5 membership. Also, if you guys want to sign up for a one-on-one session to talk about anything and everything, you can do so with the link provided below. However, a week from today, do you know what a week from today is? It's Montanica. So a week from today, June 16th, I'm going to be in Montana with the Father Deacon Dr. Ananias, what we now call FDA. I'll be there with FDA, Abbott Trefon, Metropolitan Jonah, Michael Witkoff. We're all going to be there together for the Montanica 2022 event. So next Thursday, we're not going to be able to do any one-on-ones or have our premium member group. I'm going to be in Montana. But I'm really excited to see everybody who's going to be there. So if you already got tickets and you're going to be at Montana, definitely looking forward to meeting you. Last thing that I want to say is if anybody wants to sponsor a stream, a gentleman, I got 3 sponsored streams. The next stream I'm going to be doing is a sponsored stream, and it's going to be on the difference between, it's on Orthodox martyrdom, marriage versus monasticism, the differences. And so I'll definitely be referring to this book and some other things. I got multiple articles I've already found for that topic, but that's a sponsored video stream. So somebody, actually Jeffrey Ivy, shout out to Jeffrey Ivy. Jeffrey Ivy purchased for $250 a stream topic, and that's what we're going to be doing. I have another one. Shout out to Prim. That's going to be probably Monday. It's going to be on Khazaria, and we're gonna work our way around the algorithm there, make sure we don't trigger anything. And then a gentleman, shout out to Nick Edmonds, yesterday purchased a third premium sponsored stream that we're going to be diving into the spirituality of Russell Brand and Eckhart Tolle. I thought, oh, what a great idea. What a great idea. So if you guys have some stream topics that you would like for me to tackle, usually it's going to take about a week or 2 weeks because I try to plan all these out ahead of time so I can prepare. But if you would like to, use the link in the live chat below, and you can purchase a stream. So anyways, that's basically going to take care of all the announcements. So guys, please smash that like. Truly appreciate everyone. And so with that being said, now let's just get into some of today's topics. So first thing I want to do is open up the web pages, and let's look at what is a ghetto. Where does the term ghetto come from? And we're going to use this little Wikipedia, and we'll see a ghetto is often called the ghetto as part of a city in which members of a minority group live, especially as a result of political, social, legal, environmental, or economic pressure. And so, again, useful for us to interpret for ourselves. Are the American people, is the Western world under the assault of political, social, legal, environmental, and economic pressure? I would say so. I would say the political, we already know that the globalists, the WEF, World Economic Forum, backed politicians, Dr. Klaus Schwab, bragging about how they've infiltrated all these different parliaments around the world. We know that they are already under the attack, political attack of their opponents. We saw this with the trucker convoy in Canada. Social. Are we under social, social stress? Yeah, I would say so. You look at, again, I would argue for the social, I would argue, look at the morality. And I have another article on the decline of Christianity in America that you can't even claim that that America is still Christian. Obviously, it's a secular nation, so it's not fundamentally, quote unquote, Christian. But at this point, you look at people's values and their beliefs. Christianity is on a dramatic incline. And so I have an article that will be referenced about the Benedictine option. What is that? Well, it's about Christians forming communities, living together in similar areas with similar ambitions. What about legal pressure? Is there any legal pressure going on here? Are legal consequences? Yeah. Again, look at January 6th. Look at what's going on with our federal government. And this is true for all the Western world. Look at what they do if you're not stabbed. Look at what they do if you don't want to wear a mask. This is we are the new minorities. Anybody that is pushing against the Great Reset is the new minority. We are in the ghetto. We are in the process of what I'm calling the ghettoization. And I'm particularly focused on America because, in a way, America is kind of the head of this snake due to the GDP. And this is called the American decline. And this is so the American decline right here. And this has been a conspiracy theory for a long time. Now they're just open about it. It's the idea that the United States is diminishing in power, geopolitically, militarily, financially, economically, demographically, socially, morally, spiritually, culturally, and matters of healthcare and environmental issues. There has been debate over the extent of the decline and whether it's relative or absolute. those who believe America is in decline are declinists. So then you can look at, again, Asia Power Index and see that we're on a negative trend. And I'm not here to defend, the American empire or the military-industrial complex. Of course, that's not. I'm interested in the quality of life of quote-unquote Americans, of my parents, of my extended family, of my friends, of you guys. That's what I'm interested in. That's true for the Western world. And you look at that and you see how America is actually the worst out of the first world countries. That again, the open borders, the fentanyl. What first world country other than the United States is experiencing the fentanyl being the leading cause of death from people from 18 to 45? We are. Imagine the leading cause of death. And they want to lock you in your home. What? What? I don't get it. So, yeah. Anyways, and then the environmental, where they're using the climate, the climate change agenda as a pretext for, again, this ghettoization process, taking away private property, taking away your social mobility, taking away your access to quality food. And that's another one. You look at, what do we think about when we look at the ghetto? What do we think about people having to eat processed food? They don't have access to good quality food because they're poor, XYZ. Well, look at America. Look what's going on now. Do you think beef prices, poultry prices, this stuff is going to, again, continue to rise and rise and rise? Why do you think Bill Gates is the largest farm owner now in the United States? And what's he in favor of? Impossible meat? Artificial breast milk? Guys, this is the ghetto, and this has all been planned. Now, I'm not going to get into, the Venetian ghetto and Venice and the 16th century, yada, yada, yada. I'm just real focused on contemporary America. So, first thing I want to do then is start going through some of these articles. Guys, I got tons of these articles. First one, while you're stuck at home, one group has been busy, car thieves. And so, again, the first characteristic of the ghetto that I mentioned is increased crime. And crime across the United States is increased in basically every category. Car theft was one that has seen a dramatic increase since 2020. And that happened to me, again, when I was in the Bay Area in 2017. Welcome to the Bay Area. The first week I'm there, somebody breaks into my car and steals everything. And what do I call the Berkeley police? Ask them, tell them about it. They go, oh, yeah, sorry. We get about 100 of these, every day or two. I'm thinking, what? They're like, yeah, it happens all the time. Just make sure you don't leave anything valuable in your car. Okay, well, it's a little late. Again, I came from the Midwest where I guess the social trust was a little bit higher. But that's my point. You see, the ghettoization process is infiltrating all aspects of, the country. Every state, all the cities, every major city is already, a hellhole. You basically don't want to be in any major city at this point. But here's just a quick CNN article, on car thieves. That New York Police Department data shows that reports of car thefts jumped 53% in the last 28 days. Now, this is in April in 2020, so this is a month after the first lockdown. But 53%. Half, so whatever the half of the the car theft, about half of whatever was average, add that onto it. And this is true all over the place. So Seattle Police Department received 300 auto thefts report in the last month, 24% spike the same time last year. And so it just goes on. And while overall crime in Los Angeles is down, car thefts are up. Well, that's because people were scared to death. And, now look at crime. Crime's up. That's why, I don't know if you guys saw, but even the leftist city of San Francisco is going to recall their DA, their district attorney, because, again, he's a Soros-backed DA that's allowing crime to thrive because this is an organized collapse. You have to create chaos to institute the new structure of stability. They want people to die. They want people to become poor. They want more crime. They want more chaos. So it's not hard to see. Next article, again, on this idea of increased crime. Violent crimes increases in 2021. Oh, really? I wouldn't have guessed that. Yeah, by nearly 30% in 2022 or 2020. Overall violence and aggravated assaults also increased. Article. In this article, I respond to readers asking for data to violent crimes in 2021. A comprehensive overview of crime in the United States plus fear and crime. Okay, there's crime. U.S. crime rates. Let's open that up. Violent and property crime rates in the United States. I'm not seeing a... Yeah, I'm not seeing a direct number. Anyways, increased violent crime. I just did an article on rising violent crime in 2020 per 2020 FBI final statistics released in late September 20. And we can't trust the FBI. We all know that at this point. The number of homicides increased nearly 30% from 2019, the largest single year increase the agency has recorded since it began tracking the crimes in the 1960s. Aha! So the largest single increase in homicides. We're talking about murders. We're talking about death. We're talking about deliberate attempts to kill people. Largest increase in a single year was from 2019 to 2020. And I would presume that it's only up even higher. There were more than 21,500 murders last year, a total not seen since the mid-1990s. In 2020, violent crime was up 5.6%. Here's the article I was talking to you guys about drug abuse and drug addiction. This is incredible. Fentanyl becomes leading cause of death in Americans aged 18 to 45. This is from December of 2021. So, 7 months ago? The number one killer of Americans aged 18 to 45 is now fentanyl overdoses, with nearly 79,000 people in the age range dying to them between 2020 and 2021, according to a newly released data. Families Against Fentanyl, an opioid awareness organization, analyzed the data from the U.S. government sources and found 37,208 died in 2020 and 41,587 died in 2021. Comparatively, data says COVID-19 killed more than 53,000 in the demographic in the same time period. And we know that wasn't COVID in 53,000. We already know that. Again, they've been admitting. They've been admitting that a lot of this stuff was inflated. Fentanyl overdoses reportedly surpassed suicide, COVID, and car accidents as the leading cause of death for the demographic. Of course, this is a national emergency. America's young adults, thousands of unsuspecting Americans are being poisoned. The founder of Families Against Fentanyl, James Raw, said, according to Fox News, it is widely known that illicit fentanyl is driving the massive spike in drug-related deaths. A new approach to this catastrophe is needed. And let's have a little bit of context for this whole fentanyl thing. There's a little thing called the opium war with China, in which the British Empire, which was then the strongest empire in the world, basically strong-armed China and their emperor at the time, or empress actually, to take on and buy all the opium that they were getting from, I believe, India at the time, through the East India Company. And so this was how they were making a fortune by then getting the opium from India, and I assume probably Afghanistan, places like that, and then forcing its sale on the Chinese. And then they had the opium dens and all this different stuff. And it was a catastrophe for the Chinese people and their civilization and their empire. And so where does most of the fentanyl now come from? China. And so this is a continuation of the opium war. This is a retaliation. Again, we as Americans don't have a historic memory. Our country's only 300 years old to round it off. China is thousands and thousands of years old. Their collective psyche runs much deeper. And this is true for a lot of the other nations in the world. We as Americans are always so forward looking. We don't realize how young this nation is. We celebrate 100, this building's 150 years old. go to Europe, go to these ancient civilizations, go to Turkey, go to the Mediterranean, go to Israel, go to China, go to Egypt. Well, 100-year-old building, 200-year-old building, not that old. And so they remember what happened to their country, and they are certainly retaliating again now in the 21st century through fentanyl. They're killing they're killing Americans through fentanyl. What do you think this is? This is the opium war. This is the same thing. It's the same thing. And so now, if you start looking in the demographics too, the fentanyl, it's killing all types of people. It's killing poor whites. It's killing Hispanics. It's killing black men, blacks, generally speaking, because they start snorting white powder. They think it's cocaine. They think it's whatever, a mix of whatever, and it just takes a little bit of fentanyl and you're gone. And unfortunately, dealing with this opioid crisis, I don't know if you guys remember, but last summer, actually about a year from right now, I had a close friend that I grew up with. We weren't real close once we got older, but we were always friends, close friends, in grade school and then middle school. And we weren't as close in high school, but we're still good friends. And he died of a heroin overdose last summer. And it was obviously somber for me to reconvene with so many of the high school friends that we had. But why were we there? We were there because all of our shared friend, our buddy, who was the life of the party, he was kind of like a Chris Farley type, an overweight guy that was so funny. He could do voices. He always made people laugh. He was always the life of the party. And he died of an opioid overdose, and his mom died of cancer the year before, and obviously that sent him down a really dark hole. But that's true for so many people in this country. And so drug use in America is on the rise. Across most generations, genders, and demographics, drug use in America has increased. Whether discussing heroin, prescription drugs, marijuana, or synthetics, American drug abuse has reached alarming levels. And of course, this article, I believe, is from 2021. With so much information available about the dangers of drug abuse in America, the headline after headline about record opioid abuse and overdoses, one would think that these numbers would be headed in the opposite direction. Why is drug use increasing in the U.S.? Have Americans seemingly gone backward in the fight against drug abuse? Yeah, absolutely. The current prevalence of drug abuse in America. Quest Diagnostics, one of the nation's leading providers of employee drug testing, reported in September of 2015 that the percentage of employees testing positive for drugs had reached a 10-year high. This was based on the analysis of nearly 11 million drug test results, in which 4% of urine tests were positive, an increase of 2.6% from 2014. In oral testing, there was a positive test increase of 47% over the previous 3 years, and positive urine tests for heroin have increased 146%. 146% since 2011. And it's worse now. It's worse in the 2020s. In 2014, the National Institute for Drug Abuse reported that an estimated 24.6 million Americans over the age of 12 had used an illicit drug during the last month. This accounted for 9.4% of the demographic, which is an increase from 8.3% in 2002. According to the UN's World Drug Report 2016, the amount of heroin users in the United States hit a 20-year high. The number of heroin users in the United States reached near 1 million in 2014, representing a threefold increase from 2003. Heroin-related deaths have increased a fivefold since 2000. And this was one of the most alarming things that I saw when I went to Berkeley. Guys, smash that like. We got 90-some people. If you haven't, smash that like. And if anybody would like to support the stream, please use the Streamlabs link. Use Rockfin. Shout out to everybody on Rockfin. Or if you prefer to use YouTube, feel free to use YouTube. But please smash that like. Now, when I moved to Berkeley, again, I was amped up. At that time, I was... it was before Orthodoxy, it was before coming to Christ, and I was promoting psychedelics and drugs and the New Age and the spiritual not religious and all this stuff. And I'm going to Berkeley. I'm going to do my doctorate. I'm going to be in the Bay Area. It's so exciting. And it was really fun for about 6 months. And then you go to San Francisco. You go to downtown San Francisco. You go to downtown Berkeley. And what do you see? Feces, fecal matter on the sidewalk, needles everywhere. I couldn't believe how many needles I saw when I was in San Francisco. Why? Because they give out free needles for health purposes to drug addicts so that they can shoot up cleanly for health, right? We care about your health. So we're going to give you clean needles for you to do heroin. Oh, what? And it was unbelievable. I mean, you walk down the sidewalk in San Francisco in the Bay Area, it's not uncommon to literally have to step over somebody who's high, who literally, they're there, but they're not there. It's not uncommon to literally smell human feces when you're walking around San Francisco. It's literally not uncommon. I saw this with my own eyes. A teacher leading kids, they were coming off a school bus. I don't know if they were on a field trip. I don't know exactly the context of the situation, but in San Francisco, I watched a teacher ask all the kids to hold hands, and they led like a train of children around, because they were so concerned about the amount of needles on the ground, around all the homeless people. And I forget, it was like I think it was a school. So they must have been coming off the bus or coming from a field trip or something like that. But I'm thinking, what the heck? The expense just to live there. It's so expensive to live in places like Manhattan, San Francisco, LA, right? But it's like their parents are paying that much money to live in a city that has a higher crime rate, especially car theft, especially drug abuse, especially drug overdoses, and there's needles and fecal matter everywhere. And this was supposed to be one of the most beautiful cities in America. I mean, 20 years ago, San Francisco was considered to be one of the most beautiful cities in America. Now, it's horrendous. I mean, I don't even want to go back there, you know. And the same thing's true. I just came back from L.A., you know, and I spent more time in Orange County, which is a much nicer area. You're kind of not exposed to a lot of the degeneracy and a lot of the homelessness like you are in LA County. But you drive away around LA County, drive around the airport, Compton, you know, every overpass has homeless tents. And this is supposed to be America. This is horrendous. It's horrendous. Next article, drug deaths in America are rising faster than ever. Yeah, of course. And we're not going to be able to read this article because it's the New York Times, and I refuse to give them any money for a monthly subscription, so screw them. But yeah, this is an article. You guys can look it up if you're able to get it from a different source. But drug deaths in America are rising faster than ever. Here's one. Life expectancy is down for a second year. Now, this article is from 2017. And it's only continued since. I don't know if I have it, but there's another article I was looking at. I don't know if I kept it for this, so forgive me. But I believe it was from 2020 or 2021. And life expecting was continuing to be down. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with like does Edward Dowd ring a bell to some of you guys? I do recommend looking into some of his work if you haven't. But a gentleman named Edward Dowd has been sounding the alarm on places like InfoWars, really any media he can get on. He's on Twitter. And he's a former financial guy, worked for BlackRock, Wall Street, and he's a number cruncher. He's an economist. And he's been alarmed, and this is true for here in Indiana, one of the, what is it, America One? One America? It's like an insurance company. And these insurance companies across the United States are seeing dramatic increases in death, mortality. We're talking, again, blood clots, heart attacks, neurodegeneracy problems, let's guess, what has happened since 2020 and started in 2021 that would cause such a massive increase in overall mortality? Again, I'll let you figure that one out. But again, that is the ghettoization process, right? Like the insurance companies are absolutely alarmed by how many people they're seeing die. And these aren't people over 60. I believe the statistic was like from 50 to 18 or something. It's the largest mortality of that group I think the country has ever seen. But we already know why. And we already understand that we're living in the ghetto. That's, again, the premise of today's video, the ghettoization of America. That's the point. The point is to make us, we're all in the projects now. We are all fending for our lives, financially, economically, and then literally, somebody may just come out and stab you. So anyways, this article, life expectancy is down for a second year. Drug overdoses are a big reason why. Health researchers have some grim news for Americans. We are dying younger, and life expectancy is now down for a second year straight, something not seen in more than half a century. And this is only, again, this trend has only continued. One undeniable culprit is the opioid epidemic, which is cutting down young adults at alarming and increasing rates. The researchers say. The numbers are disturbing, said Robert Anderson, chief of the Mortality Statistics Branch of the National Center of Health Statistics. The branch is part of the Federal Centers for Disease Control. Yeah, they're going to definitely control it. They're going to spread it. Which released 2 reports Thursday. One focused on all causes of death, and the other zeroed in on drug overdose deaths. A baby born in the United States in 2016 could expect to live 78.6 years, a decrease of more than a month from 2015 and more than 2 months from 2014. That's the 2-year-old decline since 1962 and 1963, when spikes in flu deaths were likely to blame. Before 2015, the 1-year decline was in 1993 and was attributed partly to the AIDS epidemic. AIDS epidemic. Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't anything to do with Dr. Fauci and some of the medicine that they were giving AIDS patients. Yeah, I'm sure it had nothing to do with that. So anyways, newborns in 29 countries, including Japan, Australia, and Spain, had life expectancies above 80 years in 2015. According to World Health Organization, the average global life expectancy was 71.4 and rising, according to the agency's most recent report. So we see, again, life expectancy is down in the United States. Why is life expectancy in the U.S. lower than other rich countries? And this is from 2020, so I did keep this one. Americans have a lower life expectancy than people in other rich countries despite paying much more for health care. We explore the number of factors which might explain this difference. And that's another lure. You pay so much for health care. Well, that's because the insurance companies, not for the medicine. And having a central, I get, health care for all, but after everything we just saw in the last few years, do you really want the government to be able to have full dominion over the medical system? I don't think so. And so just because the medical system's absolutely broken in the United States, that doesn't mean we want the government to take care of everything and fit the bill. And then therefore we have to, if we want to get the health care, we have to make sure we get the jibby jabs that they demand of us. Anywho, I'm rambling. Why do Americans have a lower life expectancy than people of other rich countries despite paying so much more for health care? The short summary of what I will discuss below is that Americans suffer higher death rates from smoking, obesity, homicides, opioid overdoses, suicides, road accidents, and infant deaths. In addition to this, deeper poverty and less access to health care mean Americans at lower incomes die at a younger age than poor people in other rich countries. Life expectancy and health expenditure over time, the U.S. is an outlier. The U.S. clearly stands out as the chart shows. And here's the chart. So, here's first world countries. This is how far off America is in regards to life expectancy and health expenditure. Not looking very good. The chart here doesn't just show the latest data points, but how life expectancy and health spending have changed during the last 5 decades. The arrows start in 1970 and connect the annual data points for both metrics, showing the change over time. Yeah, so here's 1970 right here, and then we can see it's the beginning of that red line. In the 1970s, the U.S. didn't stand out at all. It does so now because life expectancy increased so much more slowly than in other countries. At the same time, health spending in the United States increased much more rapidly, particularly since the mid-1980s. The consequence of the two exceptional developments in the U.S. followed the much flatter trajectory that the chart shows. Yeah. Next one. Why is drug use in America on the rise? Well, I guess we can already suspect that. Overall drug use and alcohol consumption in the United States are on the rise. According to the National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics, almost 32 million people were actively using drugs as of 2021, with marijuana, prescription stimulants, and methamphetamines as the most popular drugs of choice. Add alcohol and tobacco use, and more than 60% of the U.S. population was actively using some form of substance. Drug use can affect the users, especially those that are struggling with addiction, as well as their loved ones. And society as a whole, drug use costs the country more than $740 billion each year in lost work, health care, and drug-related crimes. Many factors have contributed to the rise in drug use in America. The drug problem is not related to youth or poverty. People of all ages and income levels are using drugs and struggling with some form of substance use disorder. And drug use is becoming more accepted in society. Turn on the television or listen to music, and you'll likely see or hear references about drinking, smoking, or some type of drug use. To better avoid and mitigate the consequences, as well as to seek help with addiction for a loved one, it's important to understand why drug use is on the rise. Here's an in-depth look at the problem and the factors related to the drug use. So we're just going to look at some of these statistics right here. Alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, prescription stimulants, and methamphetamines are the most widely used drugs in the country. Here's a closer look at the U.S. drug use rates and which substances are most commonly used according to the CDAS research. Alcohol, 139.8 million people. Tobacco, 58.8 million people. And that's mostly men. Marijuana, 2.9 million people. Prescription stimulants, I think this was way under. I think these numbers are much lower than they really are in this article. When I was reading this, I don't know. I know so many people, and especially people over the age of 6. They all have some type of medications that they have. They have their little weekly boxes where they put all their pills in. No, prescription painkillers, only 1.9 million people. Give me a break. No, it's way more than that. We're talking about a country of 300. Well, they tell us 330. It's been like that for a while. With all the immigrations, we're probably closer to 400 million people now. So out of 400 million people, only 2.9 million people are on prescription stimulants? No. Out of 400 million people, only 2.2 million people are on methamphetamines? No. Out of 400 million people, only 1.9 million people on prescription painkillers. We just looked at articles that fentanyl and opioids are the biggest killer of people from 18 to 41. No, it's way more than that. Heroin, 957,000 people. Cocaine, 638,000 people. And prescription sedatives, 319,000 people. So, again, just as you would suspect in a ghetto, rampant drug abuse. Here's from the Pew Research Center. As fatal overdoses rise, many Americans see drug addiction as a major problem in their community. Yeah, I think we all know at this point. I would be surprised if everybody watching this doesn't know somebody who's died from a drug overdose. I would imagine most of us do. And that's just showing you, again, the state, just like, again, in the ghettos, what did people always used to say about blacks? Well, you ask a person from the ghetto and they probably know somebody who's been shot, who's been, who's died from gun crimes. They just replaced the gun with opioids. They replaced the gun with the stabbies. And it's the exact same thing. So, yeah. I would imagine almost everybody watching this stream knows or is aware of somebody who's died from drug addiction, drug overdose of one substance or another. And so we're not going to dive into this. We get it. But look here, this was really interesting. Suburban counties had the highest rate of fatal drug overdoses in 2016. So it's not urban. In fact, urban was a little bit less. It's suburban. It's the suburbs where the most people are dying from the opioid epidemic. Again, that's my point. That we can't even look at America in regards to, the urban poor, and then we got the middle class, because the middle class promised social mobility. I have an article on here talking about, we'll get to it here in a few, talking about how there is no longer social mobility in this country. That basically wherever you're born at is most likely going to be where you die at, if not lesser. And so your mobility is only a downward mobility. Very difficult to move upward mobility in regards to socioeconomic status in the United States. And so then you look at, again, these opioid deaths. The majority of them are in the suburbs because, again, America as a whole is the ghetto. The commercials, the culture, the Cardi B, the WAP. You can't watch an award show or any sports ball or anything on TV without, again, the sort of the ghettoization, the language, the talk, the sex, the promiscuity, the drugs. It's everywhere. You literally cannot do anything in this country anymore without it being in your face. Next article. Poor at 20, poor for life. New study indicates that from the 1980s to the 2000s, it became less likely that a worker could move up the income ladder. Yeah. And this is because we know that they're deliberately trying to kill the middle class. And they're doing that, again, by moving industry out of this country. Again, for all the ills, and I'm not the big Trump supporter, at least he was trying to, or at least there was rhetoric of moving industry back to the United States and all these trade deals. But, since the 1960s, and they've been shipping, that's where the prosperity came from, is that in America, we made our own stuff. We bought our own stuff. We cared for each other. We had communities. We had a sort of social trust. The 1960s counterculture tore the cultural fabric of the country. And since then, it's just been tearing more and more and more to the point where the middle class, the ability to be born in the middle class, it's not like you're rich, it's not like you're poor, you're right in the middle class, upper middle class, lower middle class, but it gave you opportunities. And so, and it didn't discriminate racially. I mean, yes, I'm sure there's factors, but, there for a while, if you did work hard, you could get to the middle class. You could get your 2-car garage, you could get your house, but not anymore. If you're a millennial, if you're a Gen Zer, kiss that dream goodbye. Trying to own a home, you cannot save anymore because of the inflation, because of this great reset, because of what they're doing financially. You have to outproduce, you have to make more money than the inflation. And that's what people don't realize is that, you can't save your way out of the hole that we're in. So, going to your 9 to 5 and just trying to, I spend on the necessities and then put the extra cash away into a bank account. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can't save because the money's still inflating. You have to outpace the inflation in that you make it, which that's why then there is no social mobility, because then where are the opportunities? Right? And then the opportunities, this is the ghettoization of America. Well, get in the big pharma, get in the medical field, get in the law field. Again, all the things that are, as we went back, all the factors that are actually the political, social, legal, environmental, and economic pressures, those are the industries that you want to get in to actually make the money, but those are the factors that are actually keeping us in the ghetto. So you're working for the industry that then is in the process of ghettoizing America. It's not an exaggeration. It really is getting harder to move up in America. Those who make very little money in their first jobs will probably still be making very little decades later. And those who start off making middle-class wages have similarly limited paths. Only those who start out at the top are likely to continue making good money throughout their working lives. This is the conclusion of a new paper by Michael D. Carr and Emily E. Weimers, 2 economists at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. In the paper, Carr and Weimers used earnings data to measure how fluidly people move up and down the income ladder over the course of their careers. Quote, "It is increasingly the case that no matter what your educational background is, where you start has become increasingly important for where you will end." Unquote. Carr told me. Quote, "The general amount of movement around the distribution has decreased by a statistically significant amount." That means the American dream doesn't exist, right? We're stuck. You basically have to you have to have a serious skill. You have to be smart about this thing. You have to make more money than the inflation, than the agenda, than the ghettoization process. Carr and Weimers used data from the Census Bureau's survey of income and program participation, which tracks individual workers' earnings, to examine how earnings mobility changed between 1981 and 2008. They ranked people into deciles, meaning that one group fell below the 10th percentile of earnings, another between the 10th and 20th, and so on. And they measured someone's chances of moving from one decile to another. But the researchers wanted to see not just the probability of moving to a different income bracket over the course of a career, but also how the probability has changed over some time. So they measured a given worker's chances of moving between deciles during 2 decades, one from 1981 to 1996 and another from 1993 to 2008. They found quite a disparity. The probability of ending where you start has gone up, and the probability of moving up from where you start has gone down. For instance, the chance of someone starting in the bottom 10% would move above the 40th percentile decreased by 16%. The chance that someone starting in the middle of the earnings distribution would reach one of the top 2 earning deciles decreased by 20%. Yet people who started in the 12th decile are 12% more likely to end up in the 5th or 6th decile, a drop in earnings, than they used to be. Overall, the probability of someone starting and ending their career in the same decile has gone up for every income rank. Quote, "For whatever reason, there was a path upward in the earnings distribution that has been blocked for some people, or it is not as steep as it used to be," Carr said. Carr and Weimers' findings highlight a defining aspect of being middle class today, as Elizabeth Jacobs, the Senior Director of Policy and Academic Programs at Washington Center of Equitable Growth, the left-leaning think tank that published Carr and Weimers' paper, quote, "If you're in the middle, you're stuck in the middle, which means there's less space for others to move into the middle," she said. "That suggests that there's a whole bunch of insecurity going on in terms of what it means to be a worker. You can't educate your way up to the top." And I think that's what a lot of us have learned, that the entire fable of, oh, just go to college, go to a major university, get your degree, and then you'll get a good paying job, and then you'll work your way up the ladder. No, it's all been a scam, guys. It's been a fraud. The student loans that you can't file bankruptcy, you can't get out from under, the percent of interest is to make sure that you stay there. And so I know so many people that are PhDs. I know multiple people that were MDs, and they're now in their 50s, and they're medical doctors making $300,000, $400,000 a year. They're just now paying off their student loans because of the interest. And they went to school way back in the day. Do you understand that we are now in a situation where it doesn't matter if you're a PhD or whatever, we are stuck due to these student loans. It is a trap. It is a form of serfdom. It is a form of slavery. It is a form of the ghettoization of America. And that's exactly what that is. Okay, next article. 7 reasons to worry about the American middle class. This is from 2018. On May 8th, Brookings officially launched a new initiative on the future of the middle class. Through this initiative, we will publish research, analysis, and insights that are motivated by a desire to improve the quality of life for those in America's middle class and to improve upward mobility in its ranks. We have already wrestled with how do we define the group. Yada, yada. So number one, middle class incomes are stagnant. Aha. Number two, employment and wages are declining. Aha. And of course, shutting down the entire economy in 2020, shutting down people's businesses, I'm sure that helped a lot, right? I'm sure that really helped everybody. 3, middle-class children's prospects are declining. 4, destinies are diverging, especially by race. So here, this is looking at, so in 2016, real median household income varies by race and Hispanic origin. So not Hispanic. In 2000, average mean was 63.6. In 2016, it was 65,000. For blacks, it was 39,490. For Hispanics, it was in the 47,675. Oh, boy. Place matters more than ever. Place matters. Where you end up depends on a great deal, not just on your family background and your race, but where you grew up. And that's exactly what we see, right? We see the stratification of society to such a significant degree in this country that again, the social mobility, we're screwed. We're all in the ghetto. They're taking our money. Doesn't matter if you're in the middle class right now, you're soon going to be in the lower middle class and then out of the middle class. Now you're going to be in the poverty level. The inflation, taking the private property, BlackRock, buying up neighborhoods, Goldman Sachs buying up neighborhoods in Florida. What do you think this is? This is all orchestrated. This is an event. This is planned. This is the ghettoization of America. A sense of well-being has eroded, at least for some. Yeah, unless you come from the top 1%, then life is getting better and better. And isn't it funny then that the 1%, whether it be the Hollywood celebrities or the politicians or the wealthy people of our society, that they are the ones that promote the progressive agenda that's furthering the ghettoization process and accelerating their own success, right? If you're in the 1%, if you're in the top 5% in this country, basically it's becoming easier to make more money. Especially when they add so much liquid to the economy by printing all the money. So they print more money, but they're funneling that money to themselves because they know that the money is going to inflate, and so they need more of it to even stay at where they are. They print more of it, they deflate the money, or they inflate the money, I'm sorry. They make it harder on the middle class. They shrink the middle class. The middle class comes into the poverty level, and the wealthy are able to acquire more of that liquid because of its movement through the economy. And so they get wealthier and everybody else gets poorer. It's exactly what we're seeing. I mean, Bezos, Musk, Bill Gates, everybody got richer from the pandemic, except the people who actually work, except the actual citizens of the country. Things got a lot harder for them. And so you get the point here. Next one. U.S. suffers sharpest rise in poverty rate in more than 50 years. The end of 2020 brought the sharpest rise in U.S. poverty rate since the 1960s, according to a study released Monday. Economists Bruce Meyer from the University of Chicago and James Sullivan from the University of Notre Dame found that the poverty rate increased by 2.4 percentage points during the latter half of 2020 as the U.S. continued to suffer the economic impacts of the coup. The percentage point rise is nearly double the largest annual increase in poverty since the 1960s. This means an additional 8 million people nationwide are now considered poor. Moreover, the poverty rate for Black Americans is estimated to have jumped by 5.4 percentage points and by 2.4 million individuals. And again, so that all that is indicative of the country at whole. We are all in this ghettoization process. We are all becoming poorer. We are all being afflicted with the crime, with the murder, with the violence. We're all being afflicted with the drugs, with the addiction, with the overdose, and now with the poverty and with the life expectancy. Gang violence drives rise in murder rates in some U.S. cities. Summer brings an unusual crime pattern. Some police say pandemic closures and anti-violence programs are a factor. This is from 2021. Oh, and so we're not going to pay the Wall Street Journal. But gang shootings are driving an increase in homicides this year in Los Angeles, while robberies and burglaries are dropping. an unusual crime pattern reflected in the number of cities across the country. Okay. Divorce rates in the United States increased during COVID-19. So what else do we associate with the ghetto and with the projects and with poor neighborhoods? Well, single families, broken homes, right? Single mothers. Well, that's exactly what we're seeing nationwide. Divorce professionals and experts, myself included, predicted an increase in divorce filings during the COVID pandemic. I wrote about the likelihood back in March when stay-at-home orders were put in place. Now, for the first time, we're getting a look at the data for the past 6 months and how the pandemic has impacted marriage rates in America. According to the survey from Legal Templates, COVID-19 increased tensions on marriages and negatively impacted many relationships. The online company reports a 34% increase in divorce agreements compared to the same period in 2019. As people were told to work from home and limit travel, families were together more often than ever before. For those with already struggling relationships, this likely increased tension and made them realize they could be happier apart from one another. In addition, the pandemic-related stressors played a big part in this too. Concerns over quarantine conditions, unemployment, financial strain, death of loved ones, illness, homeschooling children, and mental illness spilled over into marriages and relationships. As a collaborative divorce attorney, I have seen similar numbers this year with divorce rates. The research also shows that newlyweds hit the hardest. The data revealed that 58% of couples who filed these divorce agreements were married within the last 5 years, which is up 16% from numbers gathered in 2019. In addition to being a divorce attorney, I'm also a divorcee. My ex-husband and I divorced in 2015 after only being married a few years. I can easily understand why recently married couples were less equipped to deal with the stressors of COVID-19 versus couples who have been married longer. 200% of children are more likely to get divorced if one spouse is from a divorced home. 50% more likely to get divorced when one spouse is from a divorced home. 18.9% of children living with one parent have a drug or alcohol problem. That's preparing for this stream. I have to do a stream on fatherhood, on all the research, like the positive benefits of having a father, of having a strong nuclear family, because all this stuff, so much of it, especially, again, this ghettoization process is tied to these single families and kids coming from broken homes. 18.8% of children of divorce suffered from a lifetime of alcohol dependence. 30% increase in likelihood of suicide attempts by adult children of divorce. How about America's child abuse epidemic? 4 times more children have been killed this decade than U.S. soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. Their assailants, their families. When I arrived to provide medical care, the 4-year-old girl was unconscious. She had multiple bruises, skull fractures, and brain contusion, vaginal and anal tears, venereal disease, and was hemorrhaging from places a little girl should not. The perpetrator, her stepfather. And so that's a whole nother thing, right? Is that having all these non-biological men in homes with young women is not natural. It's not natural. There's an article that I read at some point that girls go into ovulatory cycles. They hit menstruation and maturation at younger ages if they're in a home that is not their biological father, due to hormones secreted through the person, that their body, because that man is not their biological father, their body is being sent signals that they need to mature and they need to be ready for, reproduction. And so the sexual abuse, the pedophilia, the incest, we've seen this stuff being normalized over the last few years. It's horrendous. And so the child abuse, if you start getting into child abuse statistics, they're on the increase. Kids that are being sodomized, that are being raped, that are being beaten, it's on the increase in this country, which again, that is totally consistent with this ghettoization process. You see, where would you expect kids to be most vulnerable? In the ghetto. And that's exactly what we are seeing here, in the United States, generally speaking. So anyways, next article, Is everything working? What's going on here? What? Okay, it seems like everything is coming back on here. I'm not sure. It says excellent connection. I'm not sure why this is glitching out a little bit. Anyway, continuing on here. You're not receiving enough smooth streaming. What the heck? Okay. Okay. Well, it looks like it's buffering right now. It should come to here in a second. Okay. Looks like we're good now. Anyway, moving on here to our next article. America's infrastructure is decaying. Here's a look at how terrible things have gotten. So here's an article. Again, I talked to you about how out of first world nations, America has some of the worst infrastructure. Our bridges, our roads. And I couldn't help but notice this too. Again, just in LA, looking at the road quality from driving around LA County into Orange County, major difference. I live here in Indiana, but the quality of our infrastructure in this country is despicable. It's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. And so this is an article back when Donald Trump was president in 2019, and it talks about how President Trump is expected to discuss infrastructure in his State of the Union address on Tuesday, but how exactly he plans to is unclear, yada, yada. According to the American Society of Civil Engineers infrastructure report, which is published every 4 years, U.S. infrastructure gets a D+ grade, which is the same grade it got in 2013. So our infrastructure, again, a country that has that much money with the Federal Reserve that can print as much money as it wants, we have a D+ grade rating for our infrastructure. How is that even possible? How is that even possible? It makes no sense. The ASCE estimates the U.S. needs to spend some $4.5 trillion by 2025 to improve the state of the country's roads, bridges, dams, airports, schools, and more. But you really think that's going to happen? No, of course not. This is the ghettoization of America. This is a planned collapse. Guys, smash that like if you can. Aviation, airports gets a D. Airports and air traffic and control systems are in a serious need of update, the report found. How about bridges? Bridges get a C+. U.S. bridges are aging. Out of the 614,387 bridges in the United States, more than 200,000 are more than 50 years old. The report estimates it would cost somewhere in $123 billion just to fix the bridges in the United States. But they spent $53 billion in Ukraine. They just sent $53 billion in Ukraine. Dams get a D. Drinking water, D. Again, the quality of water in this country. The quality of water is a D. Energy, D+. Now, energy, again, all we need... I'm not anti-oil or petroleum, so I'll stay out of that one. Hazardous water, D+. Inland waterways, a D. Levees, a D. Parks and recreation, a D+. Ports, a C+. Rails, a B. I was surprised by that. I thought the railways would be worse. Roads, a D. I mean, roads are terrible in this country. Let's just admit it. Schools, D+. Schools need an F- is what they need. Solid waste, C+. Transit, D-. Wastewater, D+. I mean, our country is in shambles. Next article, decline of Christianity in America, and this talks about the Benedict option. The Benedict option, basically living in Christian communities and living together with people with shared values. Next one, will the American nuclear family die out? It certainly looks that way. The nuclear family, where a father and mother and child live in one household, was crowned the mainstream gold standard since the post-World War II boom. American sitcoms like I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver showed the viewing public that an idealized American family should look like. Fast forward to the 2000s, the sitcom Modern Family is probably closer to a millennial's reality. In 2018, roughly the same number of nuclear families existed as in 1984 when the U.S. population was 27% smaller. 27% smaller. Wow. Wow. While 40% of all American households were nuclear families 50 years ago, today they represent just 22%, a decline of nearly half. The report points to lower marriage and fertility rates that create fewer nuclear families altogether, the prevalence of co-living with non-nuclear housemates, and surging housing costs. Of course. Next one. The unsurprising decline of childhood literacy in America. What would you associate with the ghetto or the ghettoization? Well, lower education, lower literacy rates, lower ability to critically think. And we see this in America again as a whole. Why aren't American children learning to read? The answers are obvious. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, average reading test scores are declining among American 8th graders, in large part because of the very worst readers are performing worse than ever. What can we do about it? Elizabeth Warren and other Democrats running for president have a predictable answer. Spend billions of dollars on some initiative, the details of which I would rather undergo the voluntary removal of my gallbladder than familiarize myself with. Meanwhile, Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Education, says that we cannot simply throw money at the problem. This seems to be undeniable. It may well be the case that not all American children learned to read decades ago, but those who did were actual readers. They could sit down with Washington's farewell address or a story by Hawthorne without their eyes glazing over, and they acquired these skills with far less money spent. No nonsense about initiative curriculum, or perhaps most important about technology in the classroom. As I write this, millions of them in their 60s and 70s are browsing the stacks at their public libraries, those bizarre institutions that so few young people even associate with books, looking for the new John Grisham. Oh, neighborhood. This is an article, and we're not going to get into this one, but this is an article on the loss of neighborhoods and community in the United States. That it was very common. Again, think of the Leave It to Beaver and all that stuff, the Gene Cleavers. Like, you would have a relationship with your neighbor, your community. You would know who lived around you. You'd be friends. You know, if somebody moved in the neighborhood, you'd give them a pie. Not the case anymore. The idea that Western societies lose connection to their neighborhoods as they modernize has been a continuing theme in sociology. Ferdinand Tönnies, George Simmel, Lewis Wirth, and to a lesser degree Emil Durkheim, Karl Marx, and Max Weber all concluded that, on balance, the quantity and quality of the neighborhood and community is reduced when a society becomes more urban, more industrial, with fewer connections. Simmel's famous observation that, quote, one nowhere feels as lonely and lost as in the metropolitan crowd, unquote, illustrates a common theme of alienation and lost community in classical social theory. Often, then, assessments of modern and even postmodern societies include, quote, the loss of community and neighborhoods. The loss of community and the loss of connection to the neighborhood can be harmful to the family and children. And so, again, in part of this ghettoization process, we're losing the trust. We don't live in high trust societies. Again, like we're living in the projects. That is not a high trust situation. That is a situation where you have to have your head on a swivel. You have to be watching out for crime. You have to be watching your back. And as America modernizes, as it moves, as it progresses, it becomes more and more and more of a hellscape. The average American has $9,460 in debt. Here's how much Americans have at every age. And so you come down here and it shows that Gen Zs, on average, 18 to 23, already have $9,000 worth of debt. Millennials, 24 to 39, have around close to 80,000. Gen Xers, close to 100 or 135,000. Baby Boomers, 96,000. And the silent generation, 40,000. So we see debt, credit card debt, student loan debt, mortgage debt increasing among American families. The largest welfare increase in the U.S. history will boost government support to $76,400 per poor family. So if you get on welfare, you will make more than like a middle class person who's like working a job. What do you think that incentivizes? That incentivizes the ghettoization process even further. Less responsibility, less work ethic, less contribution to society, more UBI, universal basic income, more welfare, more government assistance, more making the government your daddy. And that's exactly what we're seeing. The massive spending hikes proposed in the Biden administration revised the Build Back Better Act would be by far the largest increase in means-tested welfare spending in U.S. history, piled on top of existing welfare system that costs $1.16 trillion per year. The average poor family with children already receives $65,200 in cash, food, housing, medical care, and educational support from the taxpayer each year. The Biden plan would add at least another $11,300 with payoffs to special interest groups, including the public school industry, teachers union, and large center-based daycare. The plan reverses the Clinton-era welfare program reforms, resurrecting the failed policy of rewarding families for not working and exacerbating the welfare system already potent marriage penalties. So, again, we already knew that's happening, but further evidence. Obesity rates continue to rise among adults in the U.S. Again, in the ghetto, processed food, eating from the gas stations, fast food, the quality of food, right? You don't have the access to the same nutrients in a ghetto, in the projects. Well, same is true in the United States. The rates of American adults with obesity have continued to increase over the past decade, according to researchers from the Centers of Disease and Control and Prevention. In the years between 2007 and 2008 and 2015 and 2016, the report says that rates of obesity rose significantly among adults, from 33.7% to 39.6%. Rates of severe obesity increased during this time from 5.7 to 7.7. The report, published online March 23rd of 2018 as a research letter in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Wow. The report defines that obesity as having a BMI of 30 or greater, and defines severe obesity as having BMI of 40 or greater. For example, an adult who is 5'9" and weighs 203 pounds has a BMI of 30. An adult who is 5'9" and weighs 271 pounds has a BMI of 40. A healthy weight for this height, according to the CDC, is between 125 and 168. So Americans are obese, fat, they're not even eating real food. America's declining well-being, health, and life expectancy, it's not just a white problem. So here's an article from the National Library of Medicine. Literally, this is an academic article. Although recent declines in life expectancy among non-Hispanics, whites coined, quote, deaths of despair, grab the headlines of most major media outlets, this is neither a recent problem nor is it confined to whites. The decline in America's health has been described in the public health literature for decades and has long been hypothesized to be attributable to an array of worsening psychosocial problems that are not specific to whites. The test some of the dominant hypotheses, we show how various measures of despair have been increasing in the United States since 1980 and how these trends relate to changes in health and longevity. We show that the mortality increases among whites caused by the opioid epidemic come on the heels of the crack and HIV, it says syndemic among blacks or whatever. So again, you can look this up if you want to read more about it. Next one, why we must restore U.S. semiconductor manufacturing for American economic and national security. So, again, the ghettoization, ghettos are often where industries once were. Industry is taken away. The money, the opportunities, the jobs are taken away, and therefore all is left is the poverty. That's exactly what we're seeing in America. The industry is being taken away. The factories are being taken away. The manufacturing is being taken away, and we are becoming more and more dependent on somebody else, and that somebody else doesn't care about us or our families like we would. 37% no longer think owning a car or home is part of the American dream. Yes, this article talks to, again, younger people who are describing the American dream. Young people now don't even want a car and a home, and they think that living in their pod, eating bugs, and doing their remote job on their computer, on their MacBook, that's the American dream. That is how retarded, again, people have become. The American dream isn't dead, but according to a third of small business owners, 31%, It needs to change. A new survey of 1,000 small business owners, many think certain aspects of the traditional American dream are part of the past, such as owning a car and a home. Yes, and we already know, again, you're going to own nothing and you're going to like it. This is part of the Great Reset. This is part of the ghettoization of America. The unbelievable rise of single motherhood in America over the last 50 years. Few institutions in America have evolved over the last 50 years quite like motherhood. More women are having their children later in life, less fertile, and they're working. Or they're doing it so in less traditional ways, before marriage, without marriage, or with unmarried partners. Single motherhood has grown so common in America that demographers now believe that 50% of all children will live with a single mom at some point before the age of 18. What? Whew. Again, what do we associate with the ghetto, with the hood? Single mothers with children, fathers absent, welfare, government assistance. Here it is. 50% of children are expected to be raised by a single mother. 50%. This article, it's hitting on something that is just so hard to wrap my mind around. More Americans favor decriminalizing sex work. What else do we think about the ghetto? Prostitutes, strip clubs, liquor stores. Look at OnlyFans. Look at the sexualization of our society. Look at Cardi B and all this stuff. It's the same thing. Now Americans, again, as Christianity wanes, the support for sex work increases. More Americans say pornography is morally acceptable. A rise of, let's see, this is 7% in 1 year. So I would love to see, this article was written in 2018. I'd love to see what it says now. I wouldn't be surprised if over 50% of this country now believes that pornography is morally acceptable. That's, again, that's the state of this country right now. Americans are drinking themselves to death at record rates. Well, there's the liquor store part of living in the ghetto, right? Strip clubs, pornography, sex work, OnlyFans, and then Americans are drinking themselves to death at record numbers. Alcohol deaths reach a 35-year high. And then the last article I have is drinking on the rise in the U.S., especially for women, minorities, and older adults. And so, guys, that is going to conclude today's stream. Please smash that like. What I just covered was how America is seeing increased crime, increased violence and murder, increased drug addiction, increased drug overdoses, increased poverty, lower life expectancy, harder social mobility, increased child abuse, poor infrastructure, less nuclear families, loss of neighborhoods and communities, decline in literacy, increase in financial debt, and increase in government welfare. All of which are characteristics of the ghetto, of the project, of poor communities. But this is happening at scale. As I showed in these articles, every single one of these attributes is happening at scale to the country itself right now. And so, so this is not a joke. And so, we are living through the ghettoization process. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek. I thought it was kind of clever to say that. But I'm very serious that that's exactly what's happening to our country. So, guys, please smash that like. I'm going to read some Super Chats now. So if you appreciated today's stream, please throw in a Super Chat. I'd greatly appreciate that if you guys could. Okay, so first Super Chat, let me go check over on Rockfin. Rockfin, we got 12 viewers over on Rockfin. Shout out to the Rock. We got the first Super Chat over on Rockfin comes from Stakeholder. Throws in $10. Shout out to Stakeholder. And no comment. We'll appreciate it, Stakeholder. And again, shout out to everybody over on the Rock that's watching right now. Next Super Chat come from Teddy Graham. Shout out to Teddy Graham over on the Rock. Throws in $5. And again, no comment. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you for the support. So thank you to everybody over on Rockfin for the support. I truly do appreciate it. Now let me get to some Super Chats over on YouTube. First Super Chat comes from Brian Mucus or Mucus, I'm not sure. I apologize, Brian. Throws in $5. Brian, M-U-C-A-S, Mucus. He says, thanks for all the content. Well, thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it. You and COTEL adjacent channels helped me get back into the church after 20 years, and I appreciate that. Take care and be well. Well, Brian, God bless you, man. 20-year hiatus from Christ, from the church. If I helped in any way, man, I am truly humbled and appreciative. Glory to God. Glory to God. That's mostly due to your own seeking, to your own willingness to change your mind, find truth, pursue God. So credit to you as well, man. Credit to you for making that choice and going down that journey. Thank you so much, Brian, for the kind words, and thank you for the super chat. Again, he says, thank you for the content. You and COTEL adjacent channels helped me get back into the church after 20 years, and I appreciate that. Well, I appreciate you, Brian. Thank you very, very much. Next super chat comes from Reconquista, throws in $5 over on YouTube and says, please pray for my brother who has colon and kidney cancer and pneumonia. He took the clot shot. He's only 38 years old. Also pray for my family as well. Well, Reconquista, make sure you throw his name and your family's name in the live chat so everybody can pray for you. And if you're not here live, at least come back and write that down on one of the comments underneath the video. So Reconquista, will definitely keep your family in our prayers. His brother, unfortunately, has colon and kidney cancer and pneumonia, and he took the clot shot. He's only 38 years old. Well, God bless him, Reconquista. Really, really sad to hear that. I'm sorry. Next super chat comes from Frankie D. Shout out to Frankie D, longtime supporter of the stream. He said, I've noticed that there has been a lot of push to get people into the information technology career field. Could this be to prevent men from gaining societal stabilizing skills? When the grid goes down, how will programming be useful? Monero is the future. Frankie D, I think that's a great point, man. I need to think a little bit more about that, but that is a freaking great point. That the traditional skills, the basic skills that maintain our civilization, if everybody's doing tech, who's gonna provide the stable, as you said, the societal stabilizing skills? I think very clever analysis, very insightful analysis. Thank you, Frankie D. I think you're right on there. And then Frankie D throws in another super chat for $3 and says, even if the government tried to remedy all the infrastructure problems, they would probably make it worse with affirmative action. I don't want a bunch of engineers that don't define, that can't define what a woman is or even believe in objective reality designing a bridge. Exactly. You don't. And I know engineering traditionally is one of the more conservative areas in academia or whatnot. Guys, and I just want to say real quick while people are still listening, a premium members group is tonight. So at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, in less than an hour, we're going to have our premium members group. We'll have a Zoom meeting where we talk about anything and everything. If you would like to be included in that, purchase a Logos premium membership, and I'll make sure to get you the Zoom link for tonight. And so next super chat comes from Frankie D. Again, throws another $3 and says, it's hard to make a career choice in this kind of world. I keep wondering if I should get some kind of job that is more marketable in a collapsed world, like hunting, building, lumberjack. Hard to say what a good option is. Frankie D, I definitely support that, brother. I really do support getting a more traditional job, profession, job title, job skill that would definitely be present in a collapsed society. I think that is a great forward-thinking idea. And then the last super chat. So thank you very much, Frankie D. Last super chat comes from Simon the Amputee. He says, God bless DPH. It was a pleasure meeting you, brother. It was a pleasure meeting you, man. I met him at St. Matthew. Shout out to St. Matthew's Church, Orthodox Church in Torrance, California. That was a fun night. I went to a young adults night. It was the most young Orthodox people I think I've ever seen in one location. And so shout out to Simon the Amputee. It was a pleasure to meet you, brother. Really enjoyed our conversation. I wish we could have talked more. And shout out to Marcos Ramos. It was nice to meet him as well. there. And so God bless everybody at St. Matthew's. It was great to meet everyone. God bless everybody that's at the young adults meeting. And God bless Father John. It was great to meet him. So let me just say again, special shout out to Simon the amputee. Special shout out to Frankie D for your multiple super chats today, brother. I definitely agree with getting in a serious profession that you could work in a collapsed society. Shout out to the Reconquista. Keep his family and his brother in your prayers tonight. Shout out to Brian Mucus. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And shout out to Over on the Rock. Shout out to Teddy Graham and Stakeholder for your guys' support. I truly do appreciate it. And I'm going to hop off here. Again, I got our premium members group tonight, so I hope everybody enjoyed it. Please smash that like. And if you'd like to join tonight, go get your membership. And Ian says it's not. Ian, again, it was a pleasure to meet Ian and your beautiful family too, brother, the Orthodox Logos. Really hoping that Claire and I can get down to Arizona and hang out with you and Sierra and go to St. Anthony's. So I think both Claire and I are going to we're pretty excited for that. So Theoria Zone says, pray for Gregory Santos. He went Roman Catholic. What? Oh, boy. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy on us all. Well, guys, I'm sorry to hear that, Theoria Zone. We definitely will. But Ian, Orthodox Logos, it was a pleasure, brother. It was great. Again, and Claire and I are really looking forward to spending time with you and Sierra. We will definitely see you in Northern Arizona, and we're going to go to St. Anthony's together. It's going to be a fun trip. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it. So smash that like. And again, if you would like to support, you can become a website member. That's one of the greatest ways. You can sign up for a one-on-one session or on the website too. If you have an idea for a video stream topic, you can sponsor the stream for $250, of which I'll be doing the first sponsored stream either Friday, tomorrow, or Saturday. And it's going to be on Orthodox martyrdom, marriage versus monasticism. And so that should be a fun one. So I will see you guys then. Again, it's going to be either tomorrow night or Saturday night. I will be back on here doing our thing and talking about Orthodox martyrdom, marriage versus monasticism. God bless you all.